Closed again, please, and we will get started. I'm glad you're networking well, but we're on schedule. Well, just put them back or sit down below if you want. Yeah. Okay, and we've just got one more set of doors to close. If you can corral the last people in, we'll get going. On time and on track, says Marvin. Okay. And just so you know, this is our final presentation this afternoon. We do have some closing remarks before we take a short break and go into the annual general meeting. So we'll be going through to just about 3 o'clock when the meeting starts. Okay, our final presentation for the day, if I could have your attention. Thank you. Our final presentation for the day will deal with a topic that isn't discussed very often and all too often is experienced by many in our healthcare sector, that being workplace bullying. I'm pleased to introduce Katherine Williams, our second featured speaker for the afternoon. Katherine is the author and publisher of Workplace Bullying, a Survival Guide, which is an excellent read. She has been featured on television and radio and in newspapers across Canada. A former speechwriter and communications specialist, she took early retirement from the Public Service of Canada in order to focus her efforts on educating people about workplace bullying, and has given them tools they can use immediately to start protecting their safety in the workplace. She has presented her seminars to unions, employee equity organizations, conflict resolution professionals, and countless others. So please welcome Katherine Williams.
Thank you very much. I've been chatting to people all day, and a lot of people have asked me, well, how did you get interested in the topic of workplace bullying? And I can assure you it's not something that I thought I would be involved in when I began my career. I started as a journalist and eventually became a public servant and ended up as a speechwriter. I can say right now I'm awfully glad I'm not a speechwriter anymore, because my former boss was recently in the media for certain alleged misdeeds. And I don't think I'd be creative enough to write speeches for her right now. But while I was working, I was subjected to, I estimate, 4 major and several minor attacks by workplace bullies. And by major, I mean attacks that seriously affected my ability to work and my health. And I think, like a lot of people, I thought to myself, it's just a hazard of being in the workplace, you know. You might have a nice boss, you might have a nasty one, you might have nice coworkers, they might be jerks. I always assumed this is just an occupational hazard. Well, back in 1980 approximately, a psychologist named Heinz Lehmann, working in Sweden, started studying this phenomenon of violence in the workplace. And he was the one who began to understand that it is a specific phenomenon of the workplace, a social phenomenon unto itself. Bullying does take place outside the workforce, of course, schools, home, but in the workplace it takes a particular form that we'll be looking at today. Next slide, please. What is it that Heinz Lehmann discovered? It's violence. Bullying is violence. It is not acceptable workplace stress. It is an identifiable attempt to harm someone. In the case of workplace violence, it's an attempt to drive someone out of the gainful employment. Okay? People will say, well, okay, what's the difference then between harassment and bullying? You hear about harassment a good deal. Governments often use the term harassment. You rarely hear a government talking about bullying. Well, the difference is that harassment can be one act. It could be an inappropriate touch, a sexist remark, a racist remark. It could be many. But harassment basically infringes on someone's civil rights. These are identified in Canada under the Canadian Human Rights Act, which is an official act of this country, part of our legislation. I'll give you a moment just to have a quick look at it. It basically says what we in Canada consider to be acceptable social behavior. Because word harassment is used here. Most governments will use this as a template when they're talking about harassment. This represents a standard that all governments in Canada can use. Workplace bullying, on the other hand, specifically attacks competence. Harassment can become part of a bullying attack. But the competence of a selected individual is under attack in the workplace by someone who has made the decision to drive that person out of the workplace. As you see, this sounds a bit, sort of paranoid. Are there actually people who are going to sit there and plot to drive you out of your gainful employment? And the answer is yes. And they're far more obvious, or far more prevalent than people really understand, until recently. When Heinz Lehmann began his studies on workplace bullying, there was almost no information on the subject. I'm happy to say that it's been slowly increasing, and there are now medical studies that I'll be talking about a little later, which actually are giving biological evidence for why bullying takes place. The recognition of the danger of bullying and how very costly it is to society has been slow to come, but I'm very proud that as a Canadian, we have been leaders in this area. Quebec, 2004, passed something called La Loi contre le harcèlement psychologique, which is the law against psychological harassment. Saskatchewan came second, and Ontario has last year followed suit. BC doesn't have any legislation or regulation right now on this subject. It does have the WorkSafe BC program, under which a person who feels himself to be under psychological attack in the workplace can seek some redress. I encourage you to look it up. Just WorkSafe BC online. In the United States, there are now about 21 states that have passed or are in the process of passing legislation against psychological harassment, workplace bullying, largely due to the efforts of a couple in, I think, Seattle, Gary and Ruth Namey. They're psychologists, and they have started a lobby group that is becoming very effective at bringing home to people in the States the importance of controlling this extremely expensive behavior. Workplace bullying costs millions of dollars. It destroys competence, it drives people out of their jobs, it ruins organizations. It can cause major organizations like Enron or Barclays Bank in Britain to implode. Think of the harm that fallout from those incidents, nothing, major catastrophes. Okay. The curious thing about workplace bullying, and one thing that really distinguishes it from harassment, is that it's a pattern of behavior. It's a pattern that takes place over time. It can take months, it can take years sometimes. It is violence, not normal stress. Okay. It is hard to read. Oh, there we are. Yes, started by one person who co-opts others. People who have no desire to harm a fellow employee can be gradually, and I have some volunteers who are going to help me demonstrate this, cooperate in pushing someone who was once esteemed right out of the workplace. Here we go. And it is certain to increase in severity and scope. One of the signs that I've learned to recognize in a workplace bullying situation is that it will escalate. Even if you fight back, it will escalate. Even if you do nothing, it will escalate. Please. Okay. And, of course, it undermines morale. It is a very insidious phenomenon because it does cause people who once trusted each other, liked each other, helped each other, to turn against each other. Oops. Serious health problems are certainly a consequence. One of the signs is psychiatric injury. Who knows what psychiatric injury is? I'm sure you've probably seen some of it. I'll just give you a quick refresher. It is different from, say, mental illness. It's not considered to be a mental illness. A psychiatric injury is caused by severe stress. It's behavioral change resulting from stress. A classic example would be hypervigilance. That feeling you get in a toxic work environment that they are out to get you. Well, it sounds like paranoia, but the paranoid person is not aware of reality. In psychiatric injuries, the sufferer is very keenly aware that something's wrong. Hypervigilance, for example, that feeling that they are out to get you, is real. They are out to get you. The person who's under attack is actually picking up subtle little clues around them. But you feel that you must be going crazy. I think everybody's out to get me. Well, they are out to get you. Yes, they are. Post-traumatic stress disorder. I'll be going over that later on. I think you may be familiar with it. Has anybody ever worked with a soldier back from the war? Hand there? Yes, there's a person over there. Soldiers often encounter severe stress. But Heinz Lehmann, in his studies of bullying, estimated that workplace bullying achieves the same level of stress as rape, as being witness to a horrific accident, as war, as being a person in a prison camp. All up there. It is that level of stress. Certainly, it can destroy an organization. Destroy it from within. Next, please. Who is bullied? Well, when I started looking into this, I was really surprised. I always thought, the people who are going to be bullied are the little weak people, the people who, have no gumption, no backbone. Well, bullies will certainly attack these people, but for the purpose of getting them as helpers, vulnerable people. The ones who are bullied are more likely to be the organization's best employees, competent, dedicated, people that you normally can trust, people who are admired, and good-natured people. Oh my goodness, yes, good-natured people. This is my own particular bane, because I am a good-natured person. And to bullies, if you're good-natured, you're a wimp. You haven't got any spine. To a bully, to the bullying mentality, strength is the ability to cause pain. If you can't hurt people, you're not strong. And bullies, for reasons we'll see in a few minutes, are absolutely obsessed with strength, with looking and feeling strong. I worked with one woman. She was my manager. She used to chew me out. She says, "You're not tough enough with our suppliers. You got to show them who's boss." And I would say, "Well, I just ask them nicely, and they always come through for me." "No, you've got to show them who's boss. You've got to yell at them. You've got to make those people work." And I would say, "But I ask them nicely, and they always go and do their best job for me." And she said, "No, this is a stupid employee. I'm dealing with a brick-headed employee. She just doesn't get it that you have to be tough." She was not capable of seeing what good nature actually is. A good-natured person has integrity, has self-confidence, is kind. A person like that has a kind of inner strength that a bully can never understand. They don't hurt people because they don't have to. When I dealt with my suppliers, I was always pleasant to them, talked to them nicely, asked them about their families, and they were so happy to be treated as human beings, that they would go over the top to oblige me when I asked them. Good-natured people are, well, look at yourselves. You're the kind of people on whom lives depend. If you go up to a patient and snarl in the patient's face and say, "Get better or else," I can just imagine what the reaction will be. And speaking as somebody who has on occasion been a patient, I have been very reassured by the calm and the confident dedication, that aura that nurses project.